scored the IMSA GT Championship. Or Dale Earnhardt, the defending IROC champion, representing the Winston Cup stock cars of NASCAR. In 1979, he was Rookie of the Year. In 1980, he was the champion. Since then, his relentless charging has earned him 4 Winston Cup titles. Or Tommy Kendall, at 6 foot 4 inches, this road racing IROC rookie is the tallest driver in the field. A former go-karter, he ripped off 3 IMSA GT championships, and last year took the SCCA Trans Am crown. Bob Wallach comes to the IROC as a rookie from Strasbourg, France. Since 1967, he's been a fixture in endurance sports cars with a long string of victories. And 3 times, he's scored the checkered flag at the 24 Hours of Daytona. IndyCar driver Scott Pruitt has raced in the IROC Series 3 times in the past. His entry gained then as a road racing champion in both the IMSA GTO and Trans Am Series. This year, he represents the IndyCars, but only after a 1-year layoff for injuries in a testing accident. Al Unser Jr. won the IndyCar Championship despite slamming the wall at Nazareth, Pennsylvania last year. Twice the IROC champion. He has never finished this series lower than 2nd place in 5 different appearances. Bill Elliott from NASCAR is in his 5th IROC series. In 1985, he won the prestigious Daytona 500. In 1988, he took the Winston Cup crown. In 1985, he became the only man to win the Winston Million. Dorsey Schrader is a sophomore in the IROC, but his road racing background is long and full of checkered flags. In 1989, he took both the Rookie of the Year and the championship in the Trans Am. Last year, he was the GTO champion. Jeff Bodine earned his way early as a modified champion. He moved to the Winston Cup and took the 1986 Daytona 500. Jeff is in his 3rd IROC series. He was champion in his first try in 1987. Mark Martin represents the stock cars of NASCAR. He's a short track master with 3 ASA titles. Last year, Martin was 2nd in the Winston Cup Series by just 26 points. He races today, starting his 2nd IROC series. Al Unser, in 1987, became only the 2nd man to win 4 times at the Indianapolis 500. 3 times, Al has been the IndyCar champion. He is the senior driver here today. He was champion of IROC 5. Rusty Wallace took the ASA crown in 1983. The next season, he became NASCAR's Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. In 1989, he took the championship. He starts today in his 3rd IROC series. 12 of the best racing has to offer in equally prepared cars, as True Value presents the Dodge International Race of Champions. Daytona International Speedway, year-round, a host to a myriad of motorsports events, and today it's the very first round in the 15th edition of the International Race of Champions. Hello and welcome to a very windy Daytona Beach, Florida. I'm Paul Page, and this is the series where we try to remove the mechanical advantage and leave the racing totally up to the skill of 12 of the finest drivers in the world. The cars are all equally matched and picked at random, and we run the series over 4 distinctly different racetracks, here at Daytona, at Talladega, at Michigan International Speedway, and we finish the series on the road course at Watkins Glen, New York. At the end of the run, the man with the most points earns $175,000 with a special wrinkle this year. If by any chance one of the 12 can win all 4 of the events, then there's an extra $250,000, or a total possible purse of $425,000. But more important, he'll be the titleist in the International Race of Champions. Now, last year, Sam Posey, the competition was terrific.
Well, the presence of Dale Earnhardt and Al Unser Jr. in the same race seemed to guarantee that sparks would fly. And this year, if anything, the struggle for supremacy between these two is more intense. Dale Earnhardt is the defending champion in NASCAR, his regular form of racing. Al Unser Jr., the defending champion in his form of racing, PPG IndyCar racing. So each seeks to defend the honor of the kind of racing that brought him to IROC. Dale Earnhardt is the defending IROC champion. Al Unser Jr. won the IROC twice, but not any more recently than 1988, and he would like to wrest the title back from Dale Earnhardt. But that's what makes this form of racing so terrific, because all the way down through the field you see matchups just like this one. Drivers looking at other drivers and saying to themselves, there's a man I really want to beat.
And without question, 12 of the best in the world. Now, the last time we raced at Daytona International was 2 years ago. And at that time, we had a most spectacular run from the back up to the front. Jack Arute has that story.
And on that day 2 years ago, Rusty Wallace rewrote the record books by starting in the last position and going all the way to the front for a victory. Now, Rusty, 2 years later, you're in the exact same position at Daytona, starting shotgun on the field. What are you going to do to try and work your way to the front?
Hey, it was just the luck of the draw. I'm just going to do the best job I can, try to get a good hard start, try to outshift them on the start, and get a good momentum built up getting into turn one and see what I can get done.
Starting 12th as you are, does it demand a different sort of tactics than you would if you were in the middle or the front of the field?
You got to get real aggressive, I can tell you that. And when you make a decision, you got to go for it immediately, not sit back and think about it because you'll run out of time quick.
A lot of talk about the battle for supremacy this year between Dale Earnhardt, the Winston Cup champion, and, of course, Al Unser Jr., the PPG IndyCar World Series champion. Where does Rusty Wallace fit into the mix?
89 Winston Cup champion, soon to be 91.
So we're going to definitely keep an eye on Rusty Wallace. Now, Bobby Unser, these Dodge Daytonas are incredibly competitive.
Well, Paul, they're going to be more competitive this year than they were last year. First of all, the Dodge Daytonas are very aerodynamic cars. They have a good downforce to them and very little drag, which gives them all their speed. Now, the big change this year is the tray they put underneath the front of the car. It runs from fender to fender, just behind the front spoiler to the radiator. Now, this creates downforce, keeps the cars from pushing, makes them a lot better in traffic. Now, the drivers all say that they're going to draft better. It creates a lot of downforce, and the cars will be able to pass easier. Now, the speed should be up around 187 to 189 miles an hour, about the same speed as the NASCAR cars are running. But remember one thing, the wind is bad today. It's going to really mess up the handling for some.
Well, Bobby, down on the pit road, the engines are fired up now on these 12 Dodge Daytonas, ready for the first round of IROC 15, the 1991 season. We take a look at the in-car cameras. There's Dale Earnhardt as he buckles in, adjusts the mirror, set it, ready to go. Al Unser Jr., two-time an IROC champion. He's set. And there's Rusty Wallace starting way back in the back of the field in last position. The question mark will be, of course, the Dodge Daytonas on Daytona. Remember, the series last year was only 3 races and started on the oval at Talladega. So there's much to be learned here in the next 100 miles. We'll be back for the start as prove a random draw. The front row, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Brabham with Jeff Brabham on the pole. Back in the second row, there's road racer Bob Wallach and road racer Tommy Kendall. In the third row, Al Unser Jr., a two-time champion here, and in the black car, that's Scott Pruitt. The pink car is road racer Dorsey Schrader and Winston Cup driver Bill Elliott. Back in row number 5, Winston Cup drivers Mark Martin and Jeff Bodine. And looking in the 6th and final row, Al Unser, the senior Unser, in the light blue car. The lime green car, of course, is Rusty Wallace. So now they're lined up. For the moment, the scorecard is totally blank. Very soon, they'll begin to make their marks that lead to a potential $425,000 as the safety car brings them up through turn number 4. Zamposi, an apprehensive moment because they have not ever practiced in these cars. They're totally new to them.
And what little practice they did do, of course, is going to be obviated by going into turn 3 and turn 4 with this immense tailwind, even as they're trying to sort out the traffic situation. A tense moment.
Gusting winds here, upwards of 46 miles an hour. Starter takes a close look at the field. The green flag is out, and we're racing the 15th edition of the International Race of Champions. Almost immediately, Tom Kendall comes down low, trying to the inside of Jeff Brabham as Dale Earnhardt comes out in front.
Kendall, a rookie, so that's an extraordinarily brave and gutsy move to have made so soon in the race.
Well, I think they realize then that they're going to have to do it early on. You know, the history of IROC shows the guys that move the earliest, going the fastest, are the guys that are doing good. Kendall is not new to this type of racing, just this type of track.
And as they come to the backside, take a look at the bright red car. That's Bill Elliott, who started in 7th and moved to 3rd place on the start. Now comes inside to challenge Kendall. Jeff Bodine closes up behind Elliott. So already the Winston Cup drivers have hooked up and are running. It's Earnhardt, then Elliott, then Bodine. Kendall is battling with Scott Pruitt.
Well, Kendall has just slowly gone backwards. In fact, not even slowly, Paul, pretty fast. Pruitt, of course, has had some experience here. Kendall is a rookie. But if you look at the guys up front, That's the guys that are used to NASCAR racing the most.
Now Scott Pruitt closes in on the top three, and Al Unser Jr. drops into 5th place now as one car runs way high up against the wall.
Remember, you can see the dust that he's bringing up there. That's from the wind. It's been blowing dust and wind all over the place. That gives you an idea how bad the wind is.
And that was Bob Wallach, who has just completed his first lap in competition on a super speedway, despite all of his experience. Look at Bodine. Split with Elliott as they run alongside of Earnhardt. Scott Pruitt in the black car closes in behind.
This must be a real tonic to Pruitt. He's been out of racing with injuries for almost a full year now. He's mixing it for the lead.
All of them tucked in right together as they come across the stripe one more time. 40 laps here, 100 miles on the high banks of Daytona.
3 abreast, sometimes 4 abreast. There's going to be some touching here pretty soon, Paul. In fact, I suppose already they've been, look at that right there. Now that's a little bit of touching going on right there between Bodine and Earnhardt. That's really hard racing.
So the battle is at the front of the field as Bodine and Earnhardt are side by side. You're watching from on board Al Unser Jr.'s car.
And of course, Al Unser Jr., champion of the IndyCar racing, looks over at Dale Earnhardt, who is right there in the orange car, champion of the Winston Cup. And those two men are just yards apart right now.
Looking back from Earnhardt as he comes to the front one more time, Rusty Wallace has managed to pick off 4 cars and is up to 8th as he moves his way up through the field. But again, the Winston Cup driver is working very well together.
The track is a little bit dirty. The wind has blown debris around on it, and you can see some of it lodging in the radiators. I doubt if that'll cause overheating, but it is a consideration.
Earnhardt leads at the moment, under challenge by Al Unser Jr. Dale Earnhardt, of course, is the defending IROC champion. We asked him if his championship changed his approach.
Still going to be a one-on-one race. You know, it's not one of them deals where you're going to go out and feel like you can dominate. You're just going to have to go out and get your best hold and best position and try to go from there. We're really lucky to be starting up front. So, you know, we're excited about being in it again, especially after winning our first series and last year. And, you know, the second series with the Dodge Daytona. So it's looking really good. The practices went well, and I'm looking forward to it.
So the fight continues, not only at the front of the field, but everybody, as somebody goes high and trails some dust, coming up very close to the wall here at Daytona. And keep an eye on Rusty Wallace. Remember, he started in last place. But now as you ride on board with Rusty Wallace, he moves up right behind Al Unser Jr. That's Earnhardt over in the orange car. Unser Jr. comes in to challenge Earnhardt and taps him, then takes the lead. But look at Wallace. Wallace down on the inside. And Rusty Wallace moves from last to first. Remember, he won here at Daytona in a very similar move starting last. Now, the two-way radio with Rusty Wallace is out of service right now, so we're not going to be able to talk to him. In another way, I'm fairly sure he doesn't want to talk to us right now, as Rusty Wallace comes from last place to take the lead in round number 1 of IROC 15. We'll be back with more after this. As True Value presents the Dodge International Race of Champions. Now keep an eye on that black car. That is Scott Pruitt. He is very definitely on the move.
Yes, he certainly is, Paul, and it just shows you Scott Pruitt has only had one race here, or on a track like this, and look how good he's doing right now. Look at it, right up, right into the camera. Now that's a bump. What they're trying to do is get these 3 cars, you can see how far they are ahead of the others. They're trying to get away from the draft, and I think they've pretty well done it right now.
Scott Pruitt tries to hold off Mark Martin as Rusty Wallace moving from last place to first.
You see the sparks? You see the sparks there. They're bottoming in a couple of places. Turn 1, turn 4 both have substantial bumps here, which make the cars momentarily unstable. You will see the spark.
And Scott Pruitt comes past Rusty Wallace and takes the lead. He's never won an IROC race on an oval. Now, these Dodge Daytonas are wonderfully aerodynamic, more so this year than last. Here's Jackaroo.
Aerodynamics always plays a critical role on a super speedway. With these Dodge Daytonas, as sleek as they are, in the past the air has come up alongside the driver's compartment and routed its way into the driver's facial area. So what the mechanics have done this year have added this small fiberglass piece to reroute the air from across the front windshield post, down the side window area, right back to the rear deck lid. And with the winds here at Daytona gusting as high as 40 miles an hour today, it could play a critical role in the outcome of the race.
Well, another thing that'll play a critical role is whether or not you can find a buddy to help you break the draft, and it looks like Wallace has that advantage at the moment as Mark Martin comes up behind Wallace. They create a long, big hole in the air and go past Scott Pruitt. Wallace takes the lead. Mark Martin slides into second place. The NASCAR drivers are especially good at communicating with one another on the track.
There is no communication from driver to driver, of course, via radio, but there is a sort of body language. If I do this, you do that. It's a kind of understood thing that's more subconscious than conscious.
And again, with a bit of help, there goes Pruitt and Mark Martin as the lead is swapped one more time.
But if you'll notice, the second group, there's going to be 5 in the group right now because Little Al and the group right behind have definitely, look at that, they're right into the draft.
Yeah, they made up half a second in just one lap to make that connection now. There is linkage between that front group and the second one.
And, of course, it's the kind of help that Elliott gave to Little Al there that is so critical to getting to the front and staying at the front here.
And now once they're in the front, hey, that deal is off now. Everybody's for their own again because they're all together in a nice 5 group right there.
2 road racers and 3 NASCAR men in this lead group of 5.
Mark Martin out in front, now being pushed by the black car. That's Scott Pruitt. Rusty Wallace, the lime green machine, runs in 3rd place. In 4th place is Al Unser Jr. and Bill Elliott in 5th. Those 5 cars all running together, but still not that much separation back to Dale Earnhardt, who runs in 6th.
Now also keep in mind, Paul, when you see the cars tucked in, just like Rusty is on Scott Pruitt right there, like Scott is on Mark Martin, the cooling in the radiator, they don't get much air. The engines get hot. So they can only do this like about a lap, and then they have to back off and move out of the way and get some nice air into the radiator.
Bill Elliott and Al Unser Jr. battle in swamp positions. At the front, it's still Mark Martin.
Mark Martin is 32 years old. He came up into NASCAR racing several years ago from the ASA series out in the Midwest, in which he had been the
That car, Earnhardt, goes sideways in the center of the backstretch. That was not in a corner as he comes down across the grass, still carrying tremendous speed.
Oh!
And Earnhardt rolls to a stop on an access road. That's not on the racetrack, but Earnhardt lost at Bobby Unser in the middle of the backstretch.
He's certainly dead. Now, it could have been that he ran over some debris and got a tire, or as bad as the wind is today, and the other cars involved, it could have just turned him sideways. Obviously, he's very disgusted. Just look at the look on his face now.
So Earnhardt loosens his shoulder straps as the yellow flag comes out. Earnhardt lost it well down the backstretch. We take a look now, Bobby Unser.
Okay, there's Dale Earnhardt on the inside, the number 2 car, the orange car.
They work their way off the second turn.
Bill Elliott on the outside. He got it loose. He started trying to gather it up. He's trying to correct for it, but it's too far gone each time he went. Looks like it was an air problem, Paul. I can't see. He might have touched Elliott just a little bit on the right rear, with his right rear, and got him started, but obviously the wind had an awful lot to do with it.
Well, that and the fact that Elliott was not in the least bit interested in letting Earnhardt slide back in front of him. It sent Earnhardt on a very long ride. Now let's take a look at this from the onboard camera and listen to what Earnhardt heard. So the Winston Cup champion and the defending IROC champion, Dale Earnhardt, with an incident on the backstretch, and he is out of the running now. 11 cars are left in the first round of the International Race of Champions. Mark Martin has the lead. Scott Pruitt is second. We'll be back.
When Dorsey Schrader, at age 18, became the youngest man to ever receive an SCCA national competition license, he never imagined the long road that lay ahead. For 18 years, Schrader was an aspiring driver, ready with his helmet and open to all driving offers. His rides included SCCA club events, Formula Atlantic, and IMSA's Firehawk Series. Then, in 1989, a test drive for car owner Jack Roush led to a full-time seat on the Roush team and the SCCA Trans Am Championship. That title led to an invitation for Schrader to compete in the 1990 International Race of Champions. The first round was scheduled for the 2.66-mile Talladega Superspeedway.
I never really got a chance to think about it. I'm about to be in the IROC race at Talladega. We went down and did our one practice session, And before I knew it, I was in the race car on the grid with the engine running, and I'm going, oh my God, you know what have I got myself into this time? It was incredibly frightening, as I didn't know what to expect at IROC at that point.
Once settled in the seat of his IROC Dodge, Schrader's talents overcame his fear and uncertainty. Despite his lack of oval experience, his Talladega performance impressed many. In the series' second race on Cleveland's Burke Lakefront Airport, Dorsey showcased his road racing skills by running with the leaders until this accident on lap 21 forced him to the sideline. Another solid performance in IROC's finale at the 2-mile Michigan International Speedway further showcased his potential and set the stage for an unexpected opportunity.
After the two oval races, when Dick Trickle got hurt at Watkins Glen, I was running in a Trans Am race there, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm in the car on the grid, and they stick their head in and they say, do you want to drive the Top Arctic car, the 66 car? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you know, Dick Trickle's got hurt. Can you sub for him? Can you drive the car? I thought, well, yeah, sure I can drive the car. You know, that had never happened without the IROC.
After 20 years of showing potential, the doors of opportunity are swinging open for Dorsey. He's already been part of this year's winning GTO team at Daytona Sunbank 24 and has a racing schedule set for the season that includes rides in a host of different disciplines: Trans Am racing, IMSA endurance event, as well as stock car outings in ARCA and NASCAR's premier Winston Cup Series. To some, his 1990 schedule of 40-plus events might seem overwhelming, but not so to Dorsey Schrader.
There's nobody in the IROC Series, nobody in Winston Cup, there's nobody in IMSA or any other venue that has more fun than Dorsey Schrader. I have a serious good time.
Well, we're ready to go racing again at Daytona as Mark Martin leads Scott Pruitt and Rusty Wallace down toward the green flag. They're on the flat here at Daytona International. Green flag about to come up. They begin to pick up the speed. Martin paces them into the flag. Now the green flag is out. And we're racing once again in the International Race of Champions. And Martin keeps his top place, but Scott Pruitt begins to fade backwards.
There they go, right back into their 2 and 3 abreast. Now they're 2 abreast down there, 3 abreast. Just like to start all over again, but Mark Martin definitely got a jump on him.
And Scott Pruitt got a terrible restart there as Scott Pruitt fell back through the field. At the front, it's Martin, and then Al Unser Jr. closing in.
Unser Jr. near the front of the field puts fear. You see him now pulling out to the inside. That really puts fear in everyone else's heart, because if there's one man, if he can succeed on these ovals, the 3 ovals that precede the final race at Watkins Glen, that is a race he could expect to dominate and perhaps win the championship with a last-minute win there.
And the defending IndyCar champion, Al Unser Jr., you look back from his car to Rusty Wallace. He helped both Wallace and Earnhardt when he moved down to the inside, pulled them both through. But now here comes Rusty Wallace.
Well, the retirement, of course, of Earnhardt changes the chemistry of the championship and this race. Every other driver now sees himself as having much better prospects than he did a few laps ago.
The teaming up and the drafting, that's the whole answer. So just watch, as you watch the cars go, how the drivers think with each other without any type of a signal or any radios to talk with, how they think, who they're going to help and how the teamwork works.
Al Unser Jr. comes back to the front. Mark Martin down to the inside. When Little Al first took the lead, he became the 5th leader of the race in just 14 laps. Scott Pruitt fell back 6 places from 2nd back to 8th on the restart. Getting a terrible restart now, has to work with Jeff Bodine to try to get back up to the front.
But an 8th place to a 1st place, the way it's going today, Paul, could be 1 lap. There's really been a lot of passing.
Here's the report now on Dale Earnhardt after his accident earlier. He's okay. As a matter of fact, Jack Arute is trying to track him down.
Paul, Dale Earnhardt hitched a ride back to the Winston Cup garage area by way of a pickup truck. He's now sequestered himself inside his Winston Cup hauler in the front of the trailer. I had a chance to speak to him, and I asked him what happened. And he said, I don't want to talk about it right now, and I don't want to talk to anybody. He then closed the door and asked us to leave.
The wind's gusting up to 46 miles an hour here, and from those onboard cameras, you get a good idea of how much that pushes a race car around, and also what it does in terms of getting debris out on the racetrack. It's still Al Unser Jr. out in front. Now again from the top of Rusty Wallace's car as Wallace pursues from 2nd place.
Now, what he'd like to do is just get up there and just barely bump little Al while he's going straight, Paul, so they could possibly try to break the draft off the other cars and get out on their own, have a 2-car race instead of an 11-car race.
So Wallace still in pursuit. They come down in front of the giant grandstand tower at Daytona International. And Wallace slides past him into the lead. Now Bill Elliott right there with him. Scott Pruitt, who's back up in the fight, tries coming down to the inside, but decides it's wiser to stay up behind Al Unser Jr.
Now you watch as they all got over behind Rusty Wallace as they were going by Little Al, and it put Little Al clear back to 3rd place. Now that again is back to the teamwork thing. Anything to gain another position.
And now Elliott comes up to help Rusty Wallace as the fight continues, and the entire field is running right together at Daytona International Speedway. Round number 1 of the International Race of Champions. We'll be back. Elliott with Scott Pruitt hooked up, used the draft very effectively as they move past Rusty Wallace, and now Elliott has the lead here at Daytona.
Just like a bunch of vultures, the minute one guy breaks off, the only way the guys in back can get on up and pass, like for example, Rusty Wallace, who went all the way back to 5th there for a while, is that they have to be a bunch of vultures to team up with each other. Now that shows you how close and how competitive the cars are together. Rusty Wallace back to 5th. He's in 6th place right now, all in less than a lap.
So if you can find a group to run with here at Daytona, you can move to the front. We just saw ample evidence of that. Scott Pruitt from the Indy cars now runs in 2nd place, following Winston Cup driver Bill Elliott.
Of the leaders at this point, Pruitt, who you see right there in the black car, is by far the least experienced at this form of racing. The other men are all seasoned NASCAR men. Pruitt has never raced this long and this hard in the front of an oval race before like this, so he's doing a tremendous job.
When Bill Elliott moved into the lead, he became the 6th leader, so fully half of the field has led this race. Scott Pruitt has some experience, Sam, in sedans as a Trans Am champion, but that's entirely different than this kind of
That's
run.
a form of road racing. They have slow turns, S-bends. It's nothing like this where you're really relying exclusively on the way the car feels in the draft and in the wind, and there he goes.
Now he needs some help behind him, and that's what he's getting. You see, they're leaving Bill Elliott kind of on the outside out there, which is what they want to do. Now Elliott should just shuck right on back a little bit.
On board with Al Unser Jr. as you watch Elliott alongside. But little Al doesn't get any help from Bodine as Bodine closes up behind Elliott, and they freeze little Al out. Scott and Mark Martin go to the inside. And that's Big Al that comes to the inside behind Mark Martin.
Big Al Unser was injured, of course, last year, broken leg. He, too, has spent some time in the hospital and out of racing, and it must be feeling very good to be contending this thing with still a shot at winning it.
Racing is so often a family affair. In this IROC series, once again, the Unser family, Al Jr. and Sr. together. But on the track, they're just racers.
Dad's another race car on the racetrack I have to pass in order to win the race, and we run very competitively with each other out on the racetrack. And so, but it is true that that I've got somebody that I can actually truly trust out there that's going to help get us to the front, and then we'll start racing among ourselves.
This was one of the things that especially the Winston Cup drivers were concerned about, because with both father and son here, now Al Unser Jr. had a friend that he otherwise didn't have. The amazing thing to me is we're well past the halfway point. The interval 1st to 10th is 9/10 of a second. In other words, with the exception of Bob Wallach, who runs alone, everybody is teamed up running right together. A small interval just opened up between 5th and 6th. But they are still very close together here at Daytona International Speedway. The leader of the run, Scott Pruitt. Bill Elliott is in 2nd place, Jeff Bodine in 3rd.
If you see that little hand signal that was coming from Al Jr., that's, hey, get in line to the guy behind.
That's Rusty Wallace. He's signaling to Wallace, who's right behind him.
Give me a push. Let's get on up. Let's team up together. That was his signal.
Well, Scott Pruitt is back in front, being chased by Bill Elliott and Mark Martin, the 2 NASCAR guys, and then Al Unser. We'll be back. Presents the Dodge International Race of Champions, and Mark Martin takes his Dodge and moves down under Bill Elliott as both of them come around Scott Pruitt. Scott back to 3rd. Al Unser is 4th.
They are approaching turn one, where there is some debris on the track in the form of a black, what looks like a bag. You're about to see it just there on the left. It'll be interesting. They are going to have to, see, there was no way to be sure as you approach that what it might have been.
Mark Martin caught a glimpse of it, moved up just a little bit high and kicked it in the air. And boy, I'll tell you, when you're going into one of those corners, Bobby Unser, you're really not looking straight ahead. You're kind of looking up and to the left.
Absolutely, you've got to do that. And Sam brought that bag. You know, they don't know when it's black like that. It could have been some rubber.
A cut tire.
Here comes Elliott now as he takes the lead. Scott Pruitt comes into second. Will Al Unser Jr. be able, or Al Unser Sr. be able to grab third? Looks like it as they all come around Mark Martin. Bodine drops back behind Martin.
This is a very big day for Bill Elliott, whose career has been kind of lukewarm for the last couple of years by his standards, of course, because he was such a huge winner a few years ago. But this is a big development for him that Earnhardt is out and that he is running this well.
Now it's Al Unser on the move as he comes to the inside of Pruitt.
He had to make a gamble. He's not getting any teamwork, though. In other words, Pruitt is tucked up to Elliott so tight, not letting Big Al in. He's going to have to out-horsepower him, Paul, or he's not going to get by.
There comes Mark Martin closing up behind Big Al. Bodine is right there as well. As with a little help, Elliott comes back to the front again. Scott Pruitt teams up with him. The logic, Bobby Unser, would seem to be that Al and Scott Pruitt, both representing the Indy cars, would team up.
Well, I'm not too sure that Scott's trying to team up with anything other than the NASCAR guys. His car's been good. He's been fast all day. He's been able to lead a lot of the race. And that's all he's worried about right now. Big Al needs a little help. Remember the driver Mark Martin, who's right behind him.
Remember, though, that Big Al is a former IROC champion. He's been through all this before. He's won the championship. He drives with a kind of confidence that some of these other men just do not have.
Of course, with the winds gusting above 46 miles an hour here, a lot of debris out on the racetrack. We've had several glimpses of it. There is an indication that maybe a good deal of that debris has ended up in the cooling intakes on Al Unser Jr.'s car, and that may be part of the explanation as to why he's dropping back and waving people by. I would guess if that's true, Bobby, he may see a hot engine.
Yes, but you can watch him pulling off, and I think you see how he pulls off to the side there. Of course, he's going to go on around, and Big Al's going to help him.
As they come three abreast across the stripe, Big Al drops down behind Pruitt now, so you have the two IndyCar drivers working together, and right behind them, the two Winston Cup drivers. But can Big Al hold that low line?
You see, Pruitt moved right up out of the way, ruined Big Al trying to help him out, and kind of ruined that teamwork deal. But Pruitt at least came out ahead out of the shuffle.
Big Al continues to hold on as they head into turn three. Now the split comes around Big Al as he drops backwards.
And let's keep in mind also, Paul, this drafting and teamwork, nobody's under obligation to help anybody else. You know, you can help somebody when it's going to help you. Other than that, let them go.
In any form of racing, it's very important to be able to change gear ratios very quickly at any track. In our True Value Mechanics of Racing, Jack Arute takes a look.
Winston Cup stock cars utilize a rear-end gear ratio system known as a full floater, which is a direct descendant of what we find under our own passenger cars. Now, every time they decide to change a gear ratio, they remove the ring and pinion and the entire housing. Now, this is not only a time-consuming effort, but it's extremely expensive because each individual gear ratio and housing costs as much as $1,500 to $3,000. Now, the International Race of Champions cars have elected to go with a short-track quick-change rear-end system simply for economy, number one, because if they had to carry enough full floaters to service their entire fleet against the 4 racetracks that they run at, the inventory alone would cost over $1 million. The short-track system is a very simple system. All that's necessary is the removal of a plate. 2 spur gears are taken and exchanged for the new gear ratio, sliding them on very simply, and then replacing the cover plate and adding the lubrication one more time. What this also allows the IROC mechanics to do is better match the horsepower and torque to the specific racetrack that they're competing at. The reason for that, there are far more gear ratios available in short-track quick-change gears than there are in full floaters.
Scott Pruitt continues to hold on to the lead here, and whoa, little elbows back in there.
That was his dad. He was pushing him, trying to give him a boost. like a little bit more horsepower going into the turn. And when he turned him loose, there was a bind in the car, and the little house car wiggled like that.
At the same time, you got a glimpse of Tommy Kendall getting up very, very close to the wall. Now Al Unser Jr. on the backstretch continues his pursuit of Elliott.
Now that's pure horsepower. They're not getting a lot of help. They both get a little bit of help from Pruitt, but not a whole bunch there.
So Scott Pruitt is able to pull away just a bit. Al Unser Jr. battles with Bill Elliott for second place as we look toward the closing laps. We'll be right back. As True Value presents the Dodge International Race of Champions. And out in front, it's IndyCar driver Scott Pruitt with just 3 laps to go. You ride on board with Al Unser Jr. That's Mark Martin. And now Jeff Bodine just ahead of little Al. As Al shuffles backwards, here is Bill Elliott fighting for the lead with the black car that belongs to Scott Pruitt.
Paul, we have never seen as much passing in an IROC race as we're seeing here today. Best race I think we've ever seen.
It has been one terrific battle, and Sam Posey have to wonder what's going on in the mind of Scott Pruitt. He really shouldn't be where he is right now.
Should and shouldn't. Pruitt is a very fast learner. He's a very intelligent young man, and sometimes you take a year off from racing, whether you want to or not, and it helps you to focus when you come back. For the other man, there's a lot that's gone under the bridge in the last year, but Pruitt comes out with a clean mind and ready to really race.
Pruitt driving very smart now, protects his position as they come through the tri-oval. His job now is to try and drive a line that will keep everyone else back. Elliott closes in.
A lap and a half to go. Decisions have now come upon them. They're going to have to make up their minds. They're going to have to team up, and go for it, because there's no time left, Paul.
The general wisdom would be that you would want to be in Bill Elliott's shoes right now, riding in second place with a chance to use a little help from Al Unser behind him and come across the line. But will Al Unser actually help Elliott? Is there a battle between the disciplines?
Elliott passed Scott Pruitt right on the outside, right here, just a few laps ago.
See, Pruitt made a defensive move, didn't he, Bobby? He came down as they came into that tri-oval D there. He didn't want to surrender the lead. Interesting, because he obviously has decided to stick it out in the lead as long as he can.
Well, it's good defensive driving that he did.
Scott Pruitt with his final pass down the back stretch. As Scott Pruitt now holding on, here is Elliott to the outside. The yellow flag flying for a moment at the start-finish line. Elliott, there is Elliott going way high. Scott Pruitt continues to hold on. Scott Pruitt holding on now. And here comes Elliott with a charge, but it's going to be a little late. As Scott Pruitt, if he can protect the position to the line, the checkered flag goes to Scott Pruitt, and he's picked up the win. And a remarkable achievement. Scotty Pruitt wins at Daytona.
And he had won, of course, 2 years ago at Riverside, a different form of racing altogether. So Pruitt now, the cornerstone of much of his career, is starting to be his achievements here in IROC.
To beat the NASCAR's best, Sam and Paul, was quite an achievement, like you said, of this young man. I think everybody's going to take a look at him like they've never done before. Fabulous race.
Well, it's a storybook finish as Scott Pruitt scores his first win in IROC on an oval, his second win in the series, but perhaps most important of all, Scott Pruitt scores a victory after a 1-year layoff due to testing injuries. We'll be right back to talk. His lead at one time or another. Surprisingly, Scott Pruitt has taken the win.
Well, Scott Pruitt has taken the helmet off and getting the congratulations from the crowd here in Victory Lane. And Scott, unbelievable, coming back from a year's layoff, and now you're in Victory Lane.
I can't believe it. I mean, it's really paid off. All the hard work, all the time, all the effort, the support from Budweiser, the support from everybody at True Sports, Steve, Barbara, especially my family. They helped out a lot, and what a better way to do it. Jeez.
Hey, what about on the restart? It looked as if, did you miss a gear? Were you a little slow coming up? Or
well, the way the seat was, I had a hard time getting it in second. I couldn't get into second, so I had to start in third. So on the restart, I just went way back. And then, I guess taking the year off and watching helped a little bit because I was able to use the draft the first time ever to my advantage.
Just a year ago, we were all worried that Scott might never walk again. Today, he takes the win in an unbelievable comeback. Now, as we look at the order of finish, Dale Earnhardt will be on the pole for the next round of the IROC at Talladega. And here are the points. Scott Pruitt with a nice, healthy lead in round number 1 of IROC 15. A great run here at Daytona. I'm Paul Page. For Bobby Unser, Sam Posey, and Jack Arute, so long from the International Race of Champions.
Saturday, ABC